In this video, I'm gonna go over the top 5 game-changing lures that have ever hit the bass fishing industry. Now, I kind of hate that term game changer because I think it's just heavily overused, but these lures truly are game changers. When they came into the bass fishing industry, people changed, rules even changed. And in this video, I wanna talk about them. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. Guys, I have USA made sun shirts, one of the only USA made sun shirts out there on the market. And right now for the month of April 2024, if you buy one of these shirts, you will get a free rod glove with your order. So all you gotta do is add the shirt that you like to cart, add the rod glove that you like to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. It is the best way to help support this channel as well as support the US. All right, let's talk about these game-changing lures. I have a list of 5 of them and I'm gonna go over them right now. Now, the first one is one that we are all very familiar with, but it is the Gary Yamamoto Senko, and or Senko, as it's probably appropriately called. Now, if you think about the Senko, you know, this bait has been around for quite a while. I'm not exactly sure the actual date when it came out, but this particular worm is probably the one piece of plastic that has caught the most fish ever. Like, I don't know that to be a fact, but I'm really guessing that the Senko is that. It is truly a game-changing lure. And the funny thing about this particular bait is it is so simple, right? It pretty much does all the work for you. I mean, you basically just cast the thing out and let it fall and it gets bit. It does everything for you. Now, you can obviously put a Senko on the back of a Texas rig. You can put it on a jig if you want. I've actually used Senkos on the back of Chatterbaits before. So it's a very versatile lure that you can fish a number of different ways. But I really think about certain techniques that we do today. For example, a wacky rig. Like, when you say wacky rig, most people think of a Senko, right? I can't even imagine what people did back in the day. Like when they wanted to go fishing docks, you know, obviously there's Texas rigs or jigs we can flip underneath docks, but back in the day before Senko, I mean, what did you do? Is that all you did was Texas rigs and jigs? I mean, it just seems like everybody these days uses a wacky rigged Senko. It's not only one of the best baits for beginners, it's also one of the best baits for seasoned veterans and professionals. So Senko, a true game changer. All right, let's get into number 2, and this is the Chatterbait. The Chatterbait was one of those baits that actually was a little bit slower to ramp up, but man, once it ramped up, it has not lost steam. And even to this day, it is, in my opinion, it is one of the best lures out there on the market. Now, the reason that I think it's one of the best lures out there on the market is there's really no situation where you can't fish this bait. You can fish it, you know, in clear water, you can fish it in muddy water, you can fish it in stained water. Smallmouth will bite it, largemouth bite it, spotted bass bite it. You can buy heavy chatterbaits that'll get really deep, I mean over an ounce in a weight, as well as ones that fish shallow. So you can fish this bait everywhere. Now, sometimes certain conditions are going to dictate whether you choose this bait over others and whether it works better than those, but a chatterbait is simply a fish catching machine. And something that's really good about a chatterbait is how efficiently it comes through grass. I can remember before chatterbaits came around, I mean, the kind of the main grass lure a lot of guys use was a lipless crankbait. Now, a lipless crankbait is still a really good bait. And also guys use a spinnerbait. But if you look at a chatterbait versus a lipless crankbait and a chatterbait, it comes through grass without getting stuff hung on it so much better than those other baits. It's why it has become a favorite when it comes to bass anglers. And the best thing, like I said about it, it's versatile. You can fish it around rock, wood, grass, obviously. It's a great bait. Now, the interesting thing about the chatterbait was there's a lot of anglers who had the chatterbait before it grew in popularity, and there was a few guys who really took advantage of the chatterbait. You know, guys like Brian Thrift actually won a tournament or two on that particular bait before people really knew about it. And now it just seems like if you look at any bass fisherman out there, they have chatterbaits on them. Every company now kind of has their own version. I mean, you have the Thunder Cricket, you have the Berkeley Slobber Knocker. There's a lot of different versions, but the chatterbait is a true game-changing lure. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that is the Alabama rig. The A rig is truly one of those baits that smashed onto the scene, and when it hit, it was unreal. I remember when this thing came out, and it wasn't like the Chatterbait. The Chatterbait kind of had a real slow, gradual rise in popularity. The Alabama rig, it crashed onto the scene. I mean, just boomed. And I remember the tournament where Paul Elias won on Lake Gunnersville, and literally out of a tournament of over 150 some anglers, there was a top 10, and everyone in the top 10 was using an Alabama rig. And their weights were far greater than anybody else out there. You know, he was really one of the guys who put that thing on the map. And the thing about the Alabama rig that's interesting is that it wasn't a new lure. It was really just, this was an Alabama rig. If you don't know what it looks like, it's an umbrella rig. And umbrella rigs have been used out in the ocean for a long time. But somebody got smart. Someone said, hey, if bass are chasing after bait and these ocean fish chase after bait and they love it, why wouldn't bass like it? And sure enough, the thing, dude, I remember when this thing hit the scene, you couldn't even buy an Alabama rig for like under $100. Like, people were making them out of coat hangers. People were doing everything they could because of how good of a bait that it was. And a matter of fact, it was so good that it's been banned in a number of high-level professional tournaments. This was one of the first lures that I can remember really being banned ever. Like, they banned it. They said, hey, you can't fish it because of whatever reasons they had. I really believe that they should bring the Alabama rig back, because since then, the Alabama rig has kind of lost its allure and its fish catching ability. You know, when it hit the scene, bass hadn't seen anything like that before. And guys were catching them no matter where you went. Nowadays, it's a very seasonal lure. It's also a very situational lure. If you're fishing it in the right, kind of like all lures, if you fish it in the right situation, the right season, man, it can be the one that catches giants, but it's not always the best thing out there. And that's why I think that they should bring it back. I would love to see some professionals using this bait. All right, let's talk about the next one. And this is the Whopper Plopper. The Whopper Plopper is still one of my favorite baits to fish. And it has a lot of similarities to me as the Alabama rig. When the Whopper Plopper hit, it was like a number of major tournaments like that were won on this bait in a row. It was like, bam, somebody wins one. Bam, somebody wins one. There was a Toledo Bend event, elite event, one-on-one. I remember all these events that were just, everyone was winning them with a Whopper Plopper. And all of a sudden, everybody had Whopper Ploppers. Everybody was throwing them. And to me, I always thought it was interesting about a Whopper Plopper because it wasn't like that different of a lure. I mean, if you don't know what a Whopper Plopper is, it's kind of a mix between a spook and a buzzbait. You know, it's like a hard plastic buzzbait. But the thing about that bait is it just had a very unique sound. I mean, you kind of think about the name of it, Whopper Plopper. And it had that such a very unique sound in it that truly attracted fish and truly was something so different that the fish couldn't stand it. And so in my mind, I've always thought, and maybe if there's a lure builder out there, I've always thought, man, if you could find a lure that just had that different of a sound, it may not have to be that different of a lure, it just may have to be the sound that really attracts bass. And if you could figure that out, you could really probably catch a lot of fish on whatever it is. You know, I'm not smart enough to figure out a new lure. But man, the Whopper Plopper, such a great bait. It is still a good bait. Like the Alabama rig, rose in popularity extremely fast, and then it kind of tapered off. And it is now, like the Alabama rig, a very situational bait. There are certain times out there on the water, certain times of the day, certain lakes where it sets up really well. And if you're fishing it, you're gonna catch the biggest fish out there, but it doesn't always work. But it is a very, very fun bait to fish. All right, let's talk about number 5. And number 5 is actually a lure and a technique that is happening right now. Right now, we are experiencing a game-changing lure in bass fishing, and that is the Jig Head Minnow. The Jig Head Minnow has won so many tournaments over the last year. It is ridiculous. And if you guys want to watch more about a Jig Head Minnow, I did a full video over on my other channel, Bass Fishing HQ, where I really broke down this lure for both bank fishermen and offshore fishermen using their forward-facing sonar. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you tomorrow.